Nearly 4 years ago, in September 2017, Governor Ivey established the Governor's Computer Science Advisory Council, or CSAC as we call it, which is co-chaired by Drs. Barbara Cooper and Dr. Jeff Gray. And this was part of her Strong Start, Strong Finish education initiative. The council is made up of educators, business and industry representatives, and government leaders. And the council has made the following recommendations, which have all been implemented, which is always great when it comes to recommendations. Number one, we wanted to create high quality academic K-12 computer science standards so that we could guide the implementation of courses. And two, to allocate funding to enable all schools to offer computer science through professional development of teachers, both in-service teachers currently in the field and pre-service teacher candidates. The Governor's CSAC released its final state policy report and recommendations at the second annual Governor's Computer Science Summit in April 2019. A lot of these recommendations culminated in the passage of Act 2019-389, the Computer Science for Alabama Act, which was sponsored by Representative David Faulkner, who's a strong champion for computer science. The act established the Computer Science Task Force to expand computer science in public schools and to create a computer science strategic plan for Alabama. Act 2019-389 also provides for a permanent advisory role for the Governor's CSAC as Alabama implements the provisions of the Computer Science for Alabama Act. Since the enactment of the Computer Science for Alabama Act, the Alabama Computer Science Task Force and the CSAC have held joint meetings under the leadership of State Computer Science Director Dawn Morrison and Drs. Cooper and Gray, who are co-chairing the CSAC. The Computer Science for Alabama Act requires high-quality computer science to be offered in every public high school by the academic year ending in 2021. So we're there. In every public middle school by the academic year ending in 2022, and in every public elementary school by academic year 2023. The Act has diversity, equity, inclusion at its core, and broadening participation and competing for all of Alabama students is the goal. Nearly 2 years after the passage of the Act, there are over 5,000 computing jobs available and open today in Alabama. And computer science is going to continue to be one of the fastest growing job fields in Alabama over the next decade. In September 2019, under the leadership of Dr. Gray, Alabama was awarded an FY 2019 EIR grant, and that stands for Education, Innovation, and Research from the U.S. Department of Education, in the amount of $3.9 million. This is used to support computer science professional development and to scale access to high quality computer science courses in all of Alabama schools through the PACS project, or Pathways for Alabama Computer Science. During the summer of 2020, A+ College Ready and the new PACS project held 15 high quality computer science professional learning programs in the state of Alabama, and this provided training for 578 teachers to deliver rigorous CS instruction. For the FY 2021 budget, the legislature, and this is last year, appropriated an additional $1 million to the Computer Science for Alabama, or CS for All program, that is designed to prepare teachers with the professional learning needed to scale high quality computer science education across Alabama. The FY 2022 Education Trust Fund budget, which is currently under review and is going to come up for a vote next week, maintains that commitment. There are a total of 18,171 students taking a high quality CS course during the 2021-2022 school year, and that's remarkable. There are a total of 441 educators teaching CS in the state of Alabama, and 578 computer science teachers, as I said, were trained this summer. And there were 1,249 students who scored a 3 or higher on the AP CS exam in the spring of 2020. And Alabama has established itself as a national leader with students, diverse students, African-American students, and female students who took an AP CS exam. And that's something we should all be very proud of. In Alabama, the 36 high schools that received the College Board Female Diversity Award placed Alabama at the top of the nation when adjusted per capita in gender diversity in APCS courses. Also, the Legacy Project, a collaboration between the University of Alabama, And Tuskegee University, funded by the National Science Foundation, is training African American females on the APCS Principles course with a national leading 88% passage rate on the APCSP exam. For 2021, Alabama ranked 14th nationally for the number of students registered to participate in the National CyberStart competition. And during the 2019-2020 school year, 422 students earned post-secondary graduate credit for completing dual enrollment courses provided by an institution of higher education physically located in the state of Alabama while enrolled in high school. Something that Governor Ivey is very excited about is her Governor's App Challenge, a CS competition for students enrolled in K-12 that began in 2018. And the goal of this initiative is to give more students the opportunity to gain recognition for their mastery and application of computer programming and design. The first Governor's Computer Science or Governor's App Challenge was held at the second annual Governor's CS Summit on April 30th, 2019. The Governor's App Challenge resumed in 2021, and the competition timeline was based on a 6-week window leading up to the Governor's Computer Science Summit today. 71 students submitted an app during this year's competition. I want to close by thanking all of our teachers, students, administrators, parents, and stakeholders whose hard work and commitment have allowed us to continue making progress towards expanding access to high-quality computer science for all of our students in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Governor Ivey is thrilled that we're back in action today with the virtual summit, and she has asked me to thank Dr. Mackey and Mrs. Morrison in particular for their leadership in sponsoring this event, and Mrs. Amanda Dykes for her effort in coordinating the virtual meeting logistics of the summit. Also want to thank Drs. Cooper and Gray for their leadership, and to everyone who played a role in making today's event special, particularly the task force and the CSAC. I also want to ask you to just lean into the work today. This is going to be an extremely interesting event. We're going to kick it off next with a keynote by Dr. Ruthe Farmer, the National Computer Science Evangelist, and we're just so excited to have her with us today. So without further ado, Dr. Gray, I'm going to turn it back over to you so we can hear from our keynote.
Thanks, Mr. Moore. 2 years ago at our last CS Summit, when we met in Montgomery in person, there was no way that we could predict what the next 2 years would bring. We had a pandemic with hundreds of teachers and thousands of students adapting not only to a new mode of learning, but many also to this new curricula of computer science that for many schools was the first time that an authentic CS course was offered at their building in person. So as Mr. Moore just noted, the new legislation was just then coming out to help us be among the top states in the nation regarding support for computer science. As Mr. Moore mentioned, Dawn Morrison is now our CS director, and Amanda Dykes, our CS specialist. And I also join Nick in thanking Amanda, especially for all the behind-the-scenes work. I can only imagine all the things that were needed to put this virtual effort together. So we also have a teacher certification pathway, support for teacher professional development, all high schools teaching computer science right now, all middle schools coming up, particularly thanks to A+ College Ready. I think they're leading a lot of the middle school teacher professional development this summer, and some other colleagues across the state who are also having a hand in that. We also have a chance to pause for some, we're saddened recently to hear about the passing of two of our new CS faculty members. Justin Kelly graduated from Tuskegee as a mechanical engineer and worked in industry for a while, and he decided to come back in 2018 to teach. He was at Shades Valley High School and was learning how to preparing for exploring computer science. And he just passed away this spring. And also Byron Smith. Byron began teaching at Etowah County in 2017, and he was a math instructor there, and also teaching exploring computer science at the Career and Technical Center in Etowah County. So both Justin and Byron were planning to complete their second year of exploring computer science professional development this summer. So we're certainly saddened to hear of their passing. Let me see if I can just share my screen here for a moment. So in terms of today's schedule, you may have seen this already, but in this particular this session we have now, we've already completed the judging. So the app challenge judging has been completed. We're now in our keynote. We'll begin our morning sessions approximately 10:15. There'll be a little break between the keynote and the morning session. And we'll have the 4 different sessions in parallel at 10:15. You can see they range from educators in the K-5 space to counselors and other educators and other stakeholders in between. At the lunch period, we'll have the app challenge showcase. So you get a chance in like a lightning talk version to watch the students present their app challenge in a brief time period. And then in the afternoon, we'll have 4 more sessions. Success stories in Alabama. We'll hear from Learning Blade and some of the work on Jay Rotze in computer science and how to build a competitive technology workforce. We'll have a closing session, and at that time, we'll also Dr. Lee Meadows will be speaking to us about the Governor's STEM Council, and Dr. Barbara Cooper will help us in introducing the winners for the App Challenge Awards at that time. We also want to thank our sponsors who made all this possible, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama and Free Labs. Free Labs also has, they'll introduce some of their work in the afternoon. Well, we're very excited to have with us to Alabama, to visit us in Alabama, Ruthe Farmer. This will be the second time that Ruthe will be visiting us. She'll be coming up for another talk in just a few more weeks. But Ruthe describes herself as a talent entrepreneur who's laser focused on inclusion and leveraging existing infrastructure to scale change. She's a founder of many things. Her most recent effort is that she's the CEO of the Last Mile Education Fund. I'm sure she'll spend some time talking about the Last Mile Education Fund, so make sure you're in tune with that and supporting that as possible. And she's also the chief evangelist for the national CS for All movement. And she's been involved with computer science for many years in many capacities. She was previously the senior policy advisor for tech inclusion in the Obama White House. And she's helped to integrate many different things that scaled up national initiatives. In fact, many of the things that we're doing in our own state here, the NCWIT opportunities, the K-12 Alliance, Aspirations in Computing, Tecno La Chicas, Aspire IT, CS Ed Week, Girl Scouts, many of the other things with Jay Rotze, CS, many of those are engaged in our own state. So Ruth's work actually touches Alabama in many different ways. So she was named the 2013 White House Champion of Change for Technology Inclusion, and she received the 2014 Anita Borg Institute Award for Social Impact. Ruthe holds a BA from Lewis and Clark College and an MBA from Oxford. So if you would, please join me in welcoming Ruthe Farmer to Alabama. Ruthe?
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you, and thank you so much, Jeff, for all of your work in Alabama and really driving you and Barbara Cooper, the hub of computer science for Alabama. And thank you, Amanda, for all your work on putting this conference together. Also want to thank Nick Moore from the governor's office, one, for promoting me to having a PhD, which I don't have, but also for having an eye on computer science for the state of Alabama. One of the most critical things that can happen in a state is dedicated action from the governor's office on computer science education. So we really applaud that. So I'm here representing CS for All, but mostly cheerleading everything that you guys are doing. I get to spend my time celebrating and lifting up what others are doing to make computer science a reality for all students. And so I'll tell you a little bit about CS for All and who we are and how we relate to something like CS for Alabama. So we are the national sort of hub of the movement, of which CS for Alabama is a strong and powerful local member. And we do everything we can to find the great ideas and the great solutions that are happening around the country identify them, and then share them out with everybody else. So we call it Scout, Share, and Scale. And so the things that you're doing that are working, we want to know about, and we're going to share those out. So we have an annual summit, much like this, used to be in person, as you can imagine, where we highlight the commitments made by organizations around the country. And that's a way of identifying it and pointing to really great practices that are working. So I do want to applaud CS for Alabama. What you guys are doing in your state is really powerful, and having state level legislation, securing NSF grants, all of this goes a long way towards building the foundation that you need for a systems level change in your state. And I really applaud that. So the title of my talk was talking about investing in the home team. And I've been thinking about this a lot, especially since the pandemic, that effectively talent immigration is pretty much closed for a while because of global travel being shut down in the pandemic. And I see this as a huge opportunity for us to double down and invest in the young people and the infrastructures we have here in our own country, since, you know, corporations can't take the quicker route of bringing someone from overseas. So this is the time that we need to invest in the home team. And we have that talent right here in the US, and we have that talent in Alabama. So there's a couple of reasons why we want to do this, and why you as educators are literally the linchpin in how this is going to work. As an educator, bringing computer science to students who don't have it, one, you're opening doors to opportunity that they would never have. A student who takes AP computer science is at least 3 times more likely to study computer science in college. This is critical because if you haven't had the preparation and exposure in K-12, you're not going to be ready when you get to college to fare well and compete with your peers. So your role as a teacher or a school administrator or a counselor in encouraging students into these courses to explore while they're in K-12 is really critical. You're opening doors for their entire lives that essentially would be closed if they didn't have that opportunity. Second, you are attracting industries to Alabama. Industries place their new locations and their new headquarters and their operations in communities that have great schools for their employees' children, that are going to have a talent pipeline for that industry. So, you know, as the technology industry, the cybersecurity industry, national security industry, as well as the space industry is growing in Alabama, the way that you grow that and keep that there is the talent pipeline, and having great educational opportunities that are going to build talent for that industry. So you're driving actually the attraction of new talent and new industries to Alabama, which is really ultimately driving Alabama's economic growth. And I think Nick would agree that the talent pipeline is the most critical piece of attracting and keeping technology industry leaders and companies in the state of Alabama. And this is a really interesting time for a couple of reasons. Previously, I'm sure Jeff has talked about it, Nick talked about something called broadening participation in computing. All of the research shows that diverse teams are more innovative. Diverse teams make better stuff. And we, the United States, have this amazing global competitive advantage that we have a native diverse population. Our people have different backgrounds, different races, different genders. We can build diverse teams right here with the talent that we have. And so it's a huge competitive advantage for innovation. And so what I'm sort of calling on you to think about is how making an investment locally in the young people in the schools in Alabama is going to build the foundation for Alabama's economic growth and attracting, you know, big companies, creating new industries, entrepreneurship, all of those things. Second, even though talent immigration has slowed from other countries, people are moving all over the place in the US because of remote work. So if you want to attract talented people who are going to bring with them their high-paying remote work jobs to your state, you've got to have great schools for their kids. So this is another way that investing in computer science education for Alabama is going to help you guys move forward. So why is this important? One, because it's the right thing to do. Every student should have all the doors open to them that could give their future as many options as possible. Two, everyone uses technology every single day. I think this year has more than ever showed how dependent we are on technology. And every person, regardless of their job, should have a foundational understanding of computation, what it is, what it can do. And third, from the perspective of privacy and security, it's really important that everyone, regardless of their role in the future workplace, is tech savvy and is able to navigate the technical world smartly and safely. So I want to really stress how important it is for every one of you to pat yourselves on the back. You know, you are doing great work just by being here, by taking the step to learn more about computer science, to stepping into teaching something that maybe wasn't your background, and is giving you an opportunity to stretch a little bit. This is a really, really powerful thing that you're doing. And it's important to understand that this is the biggest change in the education system in decades. You know, we built school in the United States before the Industrial Revolution. We built school without including engineering and technology as a core part of school. So it's really a big change, and it's going to take some time. It's going to take some work. But what you're doing as a teacher or as a school counselor, as an administrator, to take steps to institutionalize computer science into your school is really critical. And that includes all of the efforts to make sure that low-income students, that students of color are achieving at the same level. I also really want to highlight students with disabilities because they do make up 11% of our population, and we have to be very thoughtful about making sure the programs and the systems that we build are inclusive of those students from the beginning. So a couple of things I want to highlight this afternoon. It is on the schedule at 1:30. It's titled the JROTC-CS demo, and that title's not as exciting as it could be, so I just want to tell you what's really going on. In the last 2 years, CS for All has been working with the U.S. Air Force, based right out of Montgomery, Alabama, so lots of home pride there, to get computer science into schools that serve the Air Force Junior ROTC. There are 3 of our pilot high schools in Alabama: Bob Jones High School, Huntsville High School, and Prattville High School. So we're really excited to share with you this afternoon the ways that we're leveraging the Junior ROTC program to bring computer science not only into schools that don't have it, but also to facilitate the JROTC cadets taking those courses and entering those pathways through their JROTC program. And I'm kind of sad because last year I actually had 4 trips scheduled to Alabama during the spring of last year that all got canceled. I'm hoping someday soon I will be coming like in person to visit because our partners there with the Air Force are right there in Montgomery. So I really encourage you to check out that session. Recently, we've been part of an initiative to pass something called the Promotes Act of 2020, which was passed and $13 million allocated into the FY21 defense budget, specifically for STEM training and education in JROTC schools with a focus on computer science and cybersecurity. That funding is going to flow through the forces like the Air Force, the Army, Navy, and the Marines. So it's a way of bringing more dollars in to support computer science education, which also frees up dollars at the state level to support computer science education. So I encourage you to check that out. Other things that CS for All has to offer you, on our website, there are literally hundreds of curricula, program partners, organizations that are working on computer science education. Go check out our directory. All of those resources are there. We also have a wonderful program called CS Visions and Script that you should check out for your school and district, and Jeff can probably tell you more about that. And with that, I just want to really thank all of you for coming to this virtual event, for putting your time and your energy into learning computer science. What you're doing is transformational, not just for the students directly, but for the entire state and the economy of your region of the United States. And everyone I talk to, I try to really encourage to think about this as this is a long game. You know, this isn't an overnight sensation. This isn't clickbait. This is something that's going to take long, concerted work, but the rewards are going to be permanent and they're going to be long term, and they're going to be generational, and they're going to mean an economy for Alabama 20 years from now that you could never have imagined. So thank you very much for all of your work on that. And I think Jeff wanted me to take some questions. Do I need to do something, Jeff? Okay.
Oh, thanks, Ruth. So for everyone who's watching, there's I believe there's a Q&A area over on the right side. So I see a lot of discussions in the chat. Maybe you can ask specific questions to Ruth over in the Q&A section. And as you're doing that, I have a few questions just to seed things here to Ruth. So we have really rural areas in Alabama, and we want those children to also have access to computing and careers and all the opportunities as well. Do you see any specific strategies to kind of differentiate what you see nationally to bring awareness about computing in maybe urban areas, rural areas? What are some things that you may have seen, or what others might be doing to try to adapt, the messaging to these different communities?
So both the 4-H and Future Farmers of America have launched major technology initiatives, which is really exciting. And I think that's a surprising but really intriguing opportunity. Thinking about the places that are already embedded in rural communities, like the extension services and the land grant universities, I think that's another great way to do it. And, to borrow from another state, I highly recommend checking out the what Virginia did with Virginia is for Computer Science Lovers. What they did is they made a map. They worked with the State Tourism Bureau and made this map, and they showed, over here we've got, NASA and the space industry, and up here we've got DC, but down here we've got farming and agriculture and all the ways that technology and computer science is relevant on all of those areas. And I'll tell you just from a personal thing, my boyfriend works for a company called Trimble Navigation, or Trimble Inc. And they make these GPS devices that are in virtually every major piece of farm equipment or tractor in the world. And when you fly and you see these perfectly plowed fields, they've been doing that with GPS and satellites for decades. Those are robot-driven machines. There's a person in there, but they're mostly reading a book because the machine is doing the work. And what that is about is crop optimization, making sure you can get the most possible out of that piece of land. And that's all done with technology. And there's more and more of that happening. I saw a fantastic project that some kids did for the Samsung Solve for the Future challenge, or Solve for Tomorrow, where they were using drones to do targeted fertilization and weed killing in fields so that you weren't filling the watershed with poison. You were just very targeted, putting the chemicals in the right places. So there's a lot of innovation happening, and I think messaging around that is critical. And now that we have pretty much anyone can work from anywhere, it's pretty acceptable to do remote work these days. I think shoring up your broadband infrastructure for your state and investing and using some of those stimulus dollars locally for broadband is going to make a huge difference in the capacity in your rural communities. And then, working with employers to develop ways that people can work and live in rural areas and participate in the economic activities that are going on in the cities as well.
Thanks, Ruth. Let me check if we have any other questions coming up. So there was a question about how to access some of the facts about Alabama computer science. We do have slides about the history of Alabama and computer science. We didn't show those this time. We've shown those in the past. If you could write to Amanda or Dawn, or my email address is gray, Gray, at cs.ua. I'll put that in the chat. I have a PowerPoint slide of all that, and there's some facts in there. The K-12 success stories in this afternoon will also cover some of that.
So can I ask you a question, Jeff?
Sure.
So as you mentioned all these different programs that I've been involved in, that Alabama's involved in. And so I would love to hear why you, over the last decade, have taken your time and energy to get more girls into computer science, to get counselors into computer science, to do all the things. Like, why have you said yes to all of those things?
Well, I'm a first generation college graduate from a really small town in Appalachia in West Virginia. And personally, it was computer science that kind of changed my life and opened up opportunities. And so I didn't have, as many things that my parents tried to do to help support me in many ways, they couldn't advise me on this and that and where to go and things like that. So part of, I guess, but I did have one great mentor, or a couple great mentors in high school who really helped me out. So mentoring science fairs is another thing we're trying to do, and get many students involved with that. So basically, we've been seeing the barriers of computing. Early on we had we want to make sure that our counselors understood computer science, and it truly was CS for all, and it wasn't just certain students who should be in those CS classes. We wanted everybody who wanted to have the interest to be there. And working with the aspirations winners, we're so happy to do that, but also kind of bummed that we can't host. We have a pretty nice banquet, and we're just not able to do that. Maybe we'll send some virtual food over the Zoom. That is on May 8th, and we have I think Amanda's daughter, Amanda is on here. Amanda Elgin's daughter is one of our aspirations winners this year. So it's kind of like, the family started off really small, and then now we're, having so many people in different ways touch the computer science community here. And, I think it's all about relationships. So it's been, great fun watching all of that community grow. See, is there another email? Or I'm not following the chat. There's chat and there's Q&A, and I'm not seeing. So there's a Q&A over here. I'll just read it to you, Ruth. I'm not sure if you're seeing it. Well, that's the same question. Is there a summary document? Let's see. I've heard China has schools that teaches AI starting in kindergarten. Are we doing enough in the U.S. in the early years? So can you speak about what you're seeing in K-5?
Yeah, so no, we're not doing enough in the early years. And I would say more broadly, we're not doing enough, or we haven't yet got there when it comes to K through 12, or even pre-K through 12. There are points of light all over the place of people doing great things in pre-K and in K-5. But I mean, one thing that's worth understanding is that virtually every other country in the world has a minister of education who will say, this is what must be taught. And that's what is taught. We do not have that in the United States. We have local control. So it's really up to the individual states and school districts, and often principals, what is taught in the schools. So we have to kind of bring people along with encouragement and resources versus any kind of dictatorial edict. That's, both good and bad, right? But one thing I want to mention around AI, and when it comes to data science, cybersecurity, digital literacy, schools are hearing a lot of different terms, right? You're getting all these different messages. These are all part of computing, right? You don't secure technology that isn't technology, right? What are you securing with cybersecurity? Computing. Like AI is part of computing, data science is part of computing. So I think it's critical that we make sure that in the early grades, all students are learning computational thinking, and that they are playing, practicing, and learning with whether it be robots or games or other tools, that they're learning the foundations of computation. It's also critical, and I'm speaking here to the school district administration folks, that it's not enough to just offer computer science in high school. Even if you're offering exploring computer science to get students ready for AP computer science, for true equity, for true CS for all, students need to have exposure every year. You don't want to have sort of an inconsistent, like, welcome to computer science every year, because you don't know what the students have learned. They need ladders. And so getting your district to a place where kids are doing computational thinking in the early grades, they're starting to integrate computing in other subjects in middle school, like Bootstrap and math, in math, and now they have Bootstraps for physics and other courses. You want that exposure to happen K through 8, so that all the students have the equal footing to make a decision in high school about focusing in and taking the AP pathway. So I think that's really important. Now, in the short term, bridge strategies are totally important. But what you'd really like to get to is a consistency that all students are getting every year. And so they're building blocks over time, and they're not starting, intro to computer science over and over and over again over the course of high school, or the course of their K-12 experience. There is a great program coming out of Florida from Dr. Christina McCune called AI for K-12. I recommend checking those resources out. But I want everyone to just take a step back and be like, AI is part of computing. Data science is part of computing. Cybersecurity, all of these things are part of the same thing. They're not different. And I just want to, keep that in mind. We're not asking you to do 5 different initiatives. We're asking you to do 1 initiative.
Ruth, there's a question that came up about, I believe that far too many students believe computer science is just coding. How do we fix this misconception?
Yeah, maybe stop calling it coding. That would be a good start. Yeah, I think coding is the application of computer science, right? Computer programming is the application of computer science. There's many facets to it. So I think, NCWIT has great posters from their counselors for computing program that show different dimensions of computer science and the different types of jobs you might do in computer science. There's a foundation you need to learn, and then you specialize in all kinds of different things. Very few people are just going to be straight coders the rest of their lives. Some people are going to be product managers, where they're working with whole teams to build products. Some people are going to become customers, and you need to be savvy enough that if you're buying technology development from other people, that you know what you're asking for and you know what you're getting. And so, there's all dimensions, but I don't think there is a single industry of any kind that is not dependent upon information technology and computing to do their business. And I was talking to a friend, and he said, if your company has an elevator, you have software engineers. Whether you're distributing tires, or you're, Walmart, or you are creating, jets to go into space, you're going to be using technology at every level to optimize your business. And it used to be that IT was sort of a cost center, right? Like, you had to have the IT to be able to do the work. Now the IT is the work. And so many companies, for example, Disney has rebranded themselves as a technology company that does entertainment. And companies are like, we're a technology company that does banking, or we're a technology company that does insurance. Really, the technology is an enabler of all kinds of enterprise, including education. So I would wager that there's not going to be an education industry of the future that doesn't involve a foundation of technology behind it. I also really encourage all of the students that are interested in any kind of career in medicine, absolutely learn computing. Absolutely. Because the people I want building the software that's going to make the medical system run, I want them to know medicine. Like, the worst thing is when you bring in outside developers who don't know the real experience to build tools that then don't work for the nurses and the doctors. So some of the best software for nurses is actually a retired nurse who went and became a software developer and developed the software that could serve and help nurses do their jobs better. So as we modernize healthcare nationwide and medical records, and what's happening right now with vaccines and vaccines, keeping records of every American getting a vaccine passports they're talking about, all of that is going to be dependent upon technology. So if you are considering a career in healthcare, please go learn, at least take AP Computer Science, because it will set you up with a whole skill set that will be very useful in the future.
So there's a question and also a few comments in chat. So I kind of summarize as follows. Much of the drive for CS for All has been on gender and race, and there has been discussion about children with special needs, but it sometimes may not be at the forefront. So what would you say in terms of what you've noticed across the nation is being done to help children who may have some accessibility or additional need to bring computer science to them as well?
Yeah, so the Access CS for All program out of University of Washington is doing great work on this, and they're a partner with CS for All on our accessibility pledge. So if you go to our website, we have information about organizations who have pledged to make accessibility a part of their programs. And this is something to think about as you are designing what you're doing, whether it be in a school or an out of school experience. It's better to do 80% than nothing, right? So we have some guidance and resources on the website that help organizations to start to take steps. And the Access CS for All team at University of Washington will advise you and help you, as will the CS for All Accessibility Committee. There's a number of programs being developed, but one thing to think about is, this is the law. You really can't implement an education program that excludes kids with disabilities and be compliant with the ADA from a school perspective. So thinking about that early on in your design process. Also, organizations have been taking steps. So Bootstrap has made sure all of their materials are compliant and accessible. Scratch is moving in that way as well. The Apple products, the Swift playgrounds, those have accessibility tools built into them. So some of it is in the hardware and the software, but other things are just practices. Like, for example, if you're creating an after school program, don't bury it on the last page that you'll make accommodations. Put it up front. Those parents and children shouldn't have to ask. And make it clear that kids with disabilities are welcome in your program, and that you will make efforts to support their learning along with all the other students. That's one simple way you can do it. Another way, if you're a funder, if you're somebody who's investing in computer science education, ask the question on your grant applications: how are you dealing with accessibility? Because those with the dollars can help drive that conversation as well. So it's a question that should be asked, whether it's a state funding application or it's a private funding application, that question should be asked. And then I do want to highlight that, when we talk about gender inclusion, or we talk about inclusion broadly, we're not talking about some niche market of people. Women are more than half of the population of, humanity. And minority students, non-white students, make up more than 50% of K-12 students in the United States. So if we don't make efforts to make sure that everyone is at the table, we're really doing ourselves a disservice as a country in terms of we're not accessing all the talent we have available. we're not resourcing all the talent, and we're playing with 70% of the team on the bench. And so when we're launching the National Center for Women in IT, and there was this question of like, well, what are we going to do? Well, look, at the time, 59% of people in college were women, but only 18% of people in computer science. That's just a math problem. Like, just do the math on that. If the bulk of people going to college are not in the computer science pathway, you have a problem. And so I like to just like highlight for people that this isn't about minority populations. These are majority populations that are just not being included in the fastest growing job. So if we want to keep those jobs growing fast, we need to be including every possible talent population that we have.
Thanks, Ruthe. Yeah, the great work that University of Washington's doing, Richard Ladner and the accessibility team is they also have a monthly webinar. So you may want, if you're working with children who have some need, maybe check out their monthly webinar. Another question came in about, teaching has become kind of like an emergency service in terms of in the pandemic era, and so many things are being asked of teachers in many ways. And then here we come asking them to take on one more thing in the summer, learning how to, become experts in something that they've not had any training before. So how do we kind of address the issue of kind of teachers being jaded over all the many things that's happening and all the many requests to them? What are some ways that we can kind of, approach computer science and bring them into, understanding the opportunities that students might have from CS?
Well, if I had a magic wand and I could do anything, we would be paying teachers in the way we pay lawyers and doctors and every other profession that requires advanced level of education and ongoing professional development. So that's my personal view. And so, the first state that takes that on, I will give you lots and lots of applause. It has been a really, really rough year for teachers. And if we're, my sister teaches and she's like, I feel like I'm writing and performing an entire show every day. And I hope that throughout this pandemic that families and parents have developed a new appreciation for the role that the teachers have played in supporting their children, and taking care of them and advancing their education all this time, because it has been really challenging. But I would say, I would reiterate what I said earlier as how incredibly pivotal this is in the foundation of an entire economic transformation for any state, right? Having the young people prepared to enter the technology pathway sets the foundation for attracting industry to your state. It enables your kids to stay home and not move away to other cities, because you're attracting the industry and you're driving the economy. It's a foundational thing. Education is foundational. So I would say, to those that have the power, whether it be parents, students, or members of the state government, be appreciative and recognize the work that teachers are doing in every possible way. I find that recognition goes a really long way, which is why I started the NCWIT Educator Award many, many years ago. And then to the teachers, I would say, these skills are going to help you too. I don't think the use of virtual school or remote schooling and the development and the use of technology platforms for education is going to go away after the pandemic is over. We're going to continue to work in this way. And the more skills you have in leveraging and navigating technology tools, the better. And I imagine we're going to have a future where kids are going to, be remote sometimes when they're sick, or there's other ways that kids are going to be engaging. We're going to start to be able to include kids who are medically fragile in live classrooms and other ways. So these are skills that are going to help you forever in your teaching practice. And And I can just personally say thank you from me and and from everyone that is working on this, because the teachers are really the linchpin of the entire thing.
So I think we may have time for one more question. So we just want to ask you, Ruthe, what would you advise for us as Alabama educators interested in CS? What do you see? Where should we focus our priority or our next effort? What would be your recommendation for us as a state as our next kind of go-to focus?
Well, you're doing really well, and you're organized, which is important. I think having a very solid map of impact and access across your state, and understanding where the holes are, and aggressively addressing those holes, like really tracking and understanding the data of participation, paying very close attention to the success rates. Access does not equal inclusion. And so paying close attention to the success rates of kids in different communities. I would encourage you all to join sort of the national conversation as individuals. I recommend something called CS for All Teachers. There's an online community you can be part of and talk to teachers around the country via their platform and Twitter and other things. So join in those conversations. There's a really great monthly K8 chat called I think it's CSK8 monthly Twitter chat. There's also some great CS ethics Twitter chats that are happening. So there's a pretty robust national community talking about this issue that I think it's worth being a part of that conversation. But from a state level, I think you're doing really well, and you've got legislation, you've got some funding in, but I think very diligently mapping where you have hot spots and where you have low spots, and making sure that you've got the footprint growing at the right pace.
Thanks, Ruthe. Well, we really appreciate you joining us today, and then joining us again in another 2 weeks. So we have actually NC Aspirations Educator Award winners in the chat, and some of the daughters of some of the students you'll speak to in just a couple of weeks are also on this chat. So it's kind of we're all coming together in many different ways. So if you all will join me in chat, just thanking Ruthe for coming. We really appreciate her taking some time out to come visit us. I know if it wasn't for the pandemic, you would have been here anyway with some of the JROTC things happening across the state. So we really thank you very much, and
thank you. And hello, Allie. Hello, Allie over there in Alabama. Allie. Yeah, well, thank you, Jeff, for everything you guys are doing and just being a shining star across the South. I'm excited about what's going on in Alabama, and we've had actually really great support from your senators in doing this work on the Hill with JROTC. So keep going. And thank you, Governor Ivey, for all of your support for computer science.
Thank you. Amanda, do you want to pass on any recommendations on this, navigating, or any other things about Hopin that you'd like to share?